I'm the best there is at what I do. But what I do best isn't very nice.
What the idea is that this dolly is their car moving.
Oh, that's great.
And then as it sees you, it comes to a stop. Like, what the hell is that?
Hugh and I think it was X2, talked about the Japanese story, the Silver Samurai and Wolverine's love story with Mariko. Doing that, spinning that off and doing that as a standalone movie. We then went to Fox, and Fox liked the idea. They rightfully so said, you should set the roots first. Set down his origin so everybody knows who he is, where he came from, how he got the adamantium in him.
The fans of the X-Men movies know Wolverine as a character who has a certain badass attitude and is a bit of a loner, but is also quite compassionate. What they don't know is where those conflicting personality traits come from. That's what Hugh and I wanted to explore in this movie. What is the origin, not just of how did he get his claws, which is a sort of plot origin, but also how did he come to be the personality that he is?
I think Logan is your classic outsider. He's a man of few words. I always think Dirty Harry, I think Mad Max. I think in the original Mad Max, Mel had something like 11 lines. You felt for him, you rooted for him, everything. He hardly said a thing. These characters are intrinsically mysterious, they're likeable, and there's a fantasy element where part of you just would love to be them. I come with you, I'm coming for blood. No law, no code of conduct. They do what they want to do on their terms, and they don't give a stuff what anybody says or thinks about it. I mean, there's something just incredibly attractive about that.
He's a tragic hero, almost an anti-hero. You know, he has no memory, so he has no life to relate to. And the animalistic side of him is very attractive. He's fearless and therefore unpredictable. And I think as a movie character, as a presence, that's just so mesmerizing, a character that you don't know what they're going to do.
This is a beloved character precisely, I think, because he has greater emotional range than many other traditional comic book characters.
The origin story, certainly for a superhero, is incredibly important because it shows the audience who they were before they are this legendary character.
Action!
I always felt through the X-Men movies that there was a definitive movie to be made. X-Men 2 covered in a small way the origins of Wolverine. So again, I'm like, okay, this is not completely new. We have to now show it in more detail. We have to see Wolverine in his full complexity. He has some qualities and certain aspects to him that are sacred and are right. Number one, he's badass. And I don't think in X-Men 1, 2 or 3, we've had moments, I don't think he's been badass enough.
There's a tremendously famous line that I'm sure every fan knows that Wolverine has, where he says, I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do best isn't very nice. And I found that line particularly intriguing, a sort of superhero with a certain degree of self-loathing and uncertainty about his nature.
I feel he's a little deeper and darker in this movie than he was in the other three. He's a very serious killing machine. Hugh, by nature, is a sweetheart. You never met a nicer guy. And I think initially it took him a while to find the loner, the outcast, the sometimes miserable guy that Logan can be. And then movie after movie, he went there. This time, rather than playing off a familiar group, it was incumbent upon him to find all that himself and carry that on alone.
My mantra on this Wolverine film, to everybody who's involved, is that we have to exceed expectations. We can't just do another really good movie. It's got to be that much more. We've got to make him tougher, rougher. We've got to make the action bigger, brighter, all of that. I wanted everything to be better. With all the X-Men films, because I was doing a project before, I never felt that I'd quite got what I wanted. I'd never had him looking exactly as I wanted him to look. I always had this image in my head that didn't seem to appear when I watched the final film, and I wanted him to look a little frightening. I didn't want him to look like, wow, he's in good shape, cool. I wanted people to look at him like I remember looking at Robert De Niro in Cape Fear and just going, oh, shit. This guy's freaky. This is scary. I wanted veins popping out. I wanted it to look animal.
We were talking about his diet and what he went through, and he said he was just waking up at 4 in the morning to have a protein shake. So he'd fix the shake before he went to bed, and he'd set his alarm, and he'd wake up and drink the shake, go back to bed, and then he'd have to wake up at 5 or 6 to work out. And he'd work out, and he'd come home, and he'd have like 12 egg whites and wheat toast, and that was the meal he got to look forward to for the day, because it's the only time he could have bread. Very, very, very dedicated.
Chickens, lots of steak, and all different types of protein shakes, lots of training. Trying to make myself as strong as I can is important. The other thing that's really important is to not be injured, because you've got to do a lot of physical stuff in the film. It had to be very functional.
Action! The amount of discipline that he brings, he would rehearse with us for 2.5 hours a day, and that would be after he would hit his gym routine in the morning, and then he would do cardio at night. The type of training he did in the gym, the lifting, was incredibly hard. Now, the routines that we put him through, the choreography routines, I would have to give my stunt doubles and my stuntmen an hour break afterwards because I would whip them like dogs. Hugh would walk out of there with a towel and a protein shake and be like, "See you tomorrow, mate." He learns choreography and retains choreography better and faster than anyone I've ever worked with. And he was faster than 90% of the stunt guys we had him working with. That guy is an incredible athlete. He did 98% of his own stunts. He did all of his own fighting. Everything. The only thing that he didn't do was the high-flying and hard-hitting wire work.
It's hard to play these kinds of characters unless you have some sense of physicality. He doesn't shy away from anything, and he mixed it right up. And that feral quality that he went after, such a deep commitment to the character that's part of who he is. You know, if Hugh could shrink himself down a foot, he would.
The decision to put the bone claws in Logan came along with the script of going way back into his childhood. And those were hard to figure out.
ADI, who did the makeup for the show, developed these bone claws. They're a little different than the adamantium claws, so there was a lot of new design work that had to happen.
Logan's bone claws are revealed when he's a child. We looked at a lot of different reference material like rattlesnake teeth, especially baby rattlesnake teeth. They're kind of clearish, and then you see a vein or a nerve running through them, a kind of squiggly nerve. And we all really like that idea. There's an effect when the bone claw pops out, it's a little bit translucent, and then it goes opaque, almost as if when it hits the air it starts to dry or mature or harden. We also had to then design the adult version of Logan's bone claws, and there was a lot of discussion there. So we were sculpting away. We were making bone claw after bone claw, lots of different maquettes that we'd photograph from different angles and review and look. And so it was a round-robin process that went on for a while, and finally we landed on the look of the bone claws. These are cast out of a translucent urethane resin, so it's a 2-part resin, and it gives a little bit of a light transmission, so it looks a little bit more like bone and less like, you know, the opaque metal.
Ooh, shiny.
The adamantium claws themselves were pretty much executed in the same way that they have been in the other films, because they've had 3 movies to perfect that, and they work quite well.
Today, we're going to witness medical history. Today, we're going to create Weapon X.
We decided that we should make the adamantium tank resemble the adamantium tank that we're all used to, but different than how we showed it in X-Men 2. We showed it a little shinier, a little cleaner, a little more experimental, a little more scientific, as opposed to the tank that Logan stumbles upon years later, which is all decrepit and filthy, and that's when Stryker explains a bit of what happened to him.
I know that the production design in there is not exactly the same as in the other X-Men. The reason for that is that just from an overall design point of view, I felt I could get more out of reconstructing that set because a lot more happens inside that adamantium tank set than happened in the earlier movies where they were just quick flashbacks. So I felt we needed more space, more volume. I needed people on different levels to look down on the tank. Whereas what happens in the other movie is it's kind of flashbacks to him in a tank. And the world around it, therefore, didn't have to be as elaborate. So it was decided pretty early on that we would take the liberty of, he's at Alkali Lake, here's our version of Alkali Lake.
Let's begin.
Designing the mix of the three metals that make adamantium was high on his list, so you actually see them mixed together to form the metal, and it's a hot process. We have these big devices that are over Wolverine that basically drill into his skin and inject the bones and so forth of the adamantium. Hugh actually was lying in this tank with a little breathing apparatus, and the effects guys pumped in air and so forth to make the water look turbulent. The rigs themselves, they were all machined out of metal and so forth. They actually moved in. We didn't have needles on them because it was just too dangerous to have all these needles sticking into Hugh in the water. So we added those digitally later. And the close-ups, the needles in the head and so forth were all done in post. So when he first comes up out of the water, once he gets his adamantium, his body's driving these needles out of him, and he's healing rather rapidly. He gets shot in the head by Agent Zero, and for the first time, you see the adamantium under his skin.
Hugh loves this character. He truly loves this character. And I think both of us have a far greater understanding and respect for why fans love these characters than we knew before we came into this world.
If someone told me that when I did X-Men 1 or the audition for X-Men 1 there'd be a Wolverine movie, I probably would have laughed. I remember getting these sides and they had Logan's claws come out, snicked, S-N-I-K-T.
You're right in there?
Yeah, I'm fine. I had no idea of the effect the movie would have. I had no idea really about the comic book world and how beloved Wolverine is. I just, in the first one, was totally ignorant of all that pressure and just really enjoyed it. And I couldn't be more grateful or pleased in a way that the fans have liked it enough to warrant doing this film. When people say, well, I do more, and I say, hey, I love this character, but if it's clear after this, people go, that's enough, I'm ready to hang the claws up. But, you know, if they want more, I'll probably give it to them because I love it.
Kyle.
That's a wrap.